Time for the R to the E to the T to the R to the A to the C, Shion Retraction. I'm your co-host, Antoine.
That is a special intro. And honestly, I think I would have had to, I don't think I could have spelled it like that. Probably have to read it. Folks, I'm Jamie, and I cannot match Antoine there, but we are reversing course through discourse here on the pod.
Or the podcast that asks the age-old question: if a tree falls in the town square, does it make the homeless go away?
That is it. That is an interesting proposition.
Do you know why I'm asking that proposition?
I don't.
Because a listener sent through a cool little tweet, local. The tweet reads, "A township in New Jersey just cut down the trees that provide shade in its town square to keep homeless people from spending time there." That's like a Christmas.
That's
what a
vindictive.
Christmas.
That's really vindictive.
Before I reveal the town, my favorite comment on the thread was from Jean Provost. She writes, or he, that's an assumption I made. "So now they have no trees and they still have homeless people." I thought that was brilliant. I was like, "What? Well said, Jean. Well put together there." The town in question is called Lakewood. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Are they infamous?
They have a big tent city.
Is that what it is?
But the town square, I mean, it's like an old town. It's a historic, like, resort area. I am very familiar with Lakewood. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like when you say resort area, is this because
it used to be back in the day? If you were to drive through like the old town, you would see like classic architecture, classic American architecture for old main streets and things like that. And it used to be a resort area for rich people, like back in the day, not any time in living memory.
What part of Jersey is this in? Is this near the shore?
Ocean County.
Is that by the shore?
Yes.
I'm trying to assume based on.
I mean, you could have easily Googled that on a map really quick.
No, but I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. I wanted to hear it from a local to give me the dirt. I wanted you. I could Google anything in the world, but I'm not going to get that natural, homegrown feel of like that hometown boy is like.
Yeah, Lakewood. Lakewood does have a homeless population. I thought they were living in the woods. That may have been addressed at some point. I haven't been following that because I don't live around there anymore. But the town square. I'm trying to think. I know there's a park. I know I didn't know that there was a homeless population living in like the center of town. I wonder.
I mean, to say living is a little. I mean, I don't know if they're living there. Maybe it's a place to congregate, to, I don't know, get out of the sun, because there used to be ample foliage that created a nice little canopy that allowed you to a little respite from the fact that not only is your life turned upside down because you don't have a home to go to at the end of the day, so you're out there trying to just get a little, get out of the sun for a little bit during this incredibly unprecedented dry summer with droughts and high heat. And this town said, "No, you cannot respite here in this square. We're going to cut down all the trees, all the beauty, all the beautiful,
all the history
that the history behind these trees. They're all gone because we want you gone. If there's no trees here, and this is just a hot, soaked, asphalt-ridden, brick-layered, soaking up the sun at incredible intensity. That's what we want out of our town square. We want nowhere for any human, no man, no woman, no they, to be able to get out of the heat. We want you to cross through the town square feeling like you are Lawrence of Arabia crossing the Sahara, deep in the desert. That's what we want. That's the kind of town square we want.
Yeah,
we'd rather have that.
I mean,
see any homeless people, see any people around here who don't have homes. We'd rather have that. Never mind climate change. Never mind helping out the ecosystem.
Lakewood's a complicated story. Lakewood's a complicated story.
Complicated?
Yeah. And
we've had enough.
I am Googling images right now to try and get an understanding of what trees, because have you been to like a red bank?
I've heard of. No, I haven't been to Red Bank. I may have a while.
I mean, when you think about Lakewood, it has
There's
a
a picture
park.
here.
It has
There's a
a park
picture
around
here.
a lake, but and it has trees, you know, on the sidewalk next to streets. But it's
I don't know if you can
you
see
know,
that. This is what it looks like now. These were so all these things used to have trees on them. What I'm showing, listener, are a bunch of raised squares over the brick that made up the majority of that makes up actually the
so it was just covering a
entirety.
sidewalk or something. Maybe there is a town square that I've never been
Yeah,
to. That
you may not have seen it, but I mean, if this isn't recognizable to you, then yeah, maybe you've never been to this part of the town.
yeah,
But
it's possible.
it's a pretty big square that is featured in this photo, and then there were basically squares littered
See it here.
throughout that had trees that provided
Oh yeah,
shade.
it's like a side type thing. I see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
town squares are usually on the
yeah,
side
I
in a
see. I
modern
see.
town. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you know, because I mean, cars can't go through them, you know, so they're usually off to the side a little bit. Anyway, so
well,
I wanted to throw that out there.
that's one way to address your homeless population. That's
Well, you're not really addressing the homeless
well,
population.
like
You're
I said, it's one
addressing
way to address it. I don't.
you're
What
moving
did you
it
do?
from one place to
Yeah, I
another.
know. Like you, all you've done is displace them.
Yeah,
I would out
basically
of
made them
sight, out of
somebody else's
mind.
problem.
Well, it's still their problem. I don't think they went to another town.
Oh yeah, probably not. No, of course not. Why would you? You should stick it to the town. Stick around.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. But well, here's the thing. You know, it's not like they're alone. You know, or this town is alone because New York has been. This has been one of the larger complaints about New York City in terms of how it treats the homeless because New York has created benches. They'll put like benches over heated grates because in the winter you'd want, you know, if you're homeless you'd want to be near heat obviously, and a lot of the grates coming up from the subway or the ventilation from the ground are quite warm, so homeless people, or if you could fashion a sleeping bag in a sort of sleepy situation over that. And what New York has done is they've actually put these benches over these grates that are graded, but with essentially they're like raised. I feel like the word spigot isn't the right word, but it's like little raised things that make it incredibly uncomfortable to lay down on these benches or to really sit on them as a means to make sure that homeless people cannot congregate in those areas. So my point is, it's not like other progressive bastions or parts of the North or what have you are doing any better. This is very much
I
a
just don't
thing.
understand. Instead of deterrence, why isn't there just something provided? Is it that you know? I mean, the obvious solution to me
Mm.
would be to build a haven, build something, plant trees in an area that I don't. I'm having trouble because I don't know enough about this issue.
Yeah.
But if you were to construct something that would offer shade and hopefully a little more than just shade, I mean, that seems like the bare minimum. But is that something that the homeless population wouldn't want to be at? I mean, like you know, it would it be like you would build it, but they wouldn't come? Like,
Yeah, I
I
mean, look,
don't,
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know enough about the issue. I know,
because it like it's so you're building all these deterrences as if they're pigeons that you don't
yeah,
want, you
yeah.
know,
Well,
pooping
I
on your
mean,
property. You're putting spikes on the wire.
there are issues.
Why not
Mm.
build something at homes, like
I think.
homes or
Well,
something?
I think. Well, here's the thing. I can't. I don't want to overspeak on this issue because I mean, I only raised it because of just how ludicrous it seems to harm the beautification of your own town just to deter a group of people that you deem basically undesirable in your area. And you're right. I think it's up to the towns, people in government, to create better ideas and to have better ideas, I should say, in terms of dealing with this. That's sort of what I'm calling out. I'm like, this is such a bad idea. And it is up to the people who made this decision to have thought of a better idea. It's not up to us to figure this out because I don't work in government. I don't work in that town's government. So it's not up to me to figure out what they should be doing. But I could definitely say, objectively, that's not probably the best thing to be doing. There's got to be a better way than to just simply, like you said, treat human beings like pigeons or
That's the
rats.
thing. Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
something to be deterred or avoid.
Yeah.
It's almost subhuman. It is
Yeah.
subhuman. You're
Well, yeah.
Instead of addressing them and saying these are human beings. I mean, you think of like people coming in across the border, right? Like
Right.
refugees or something like that. You don't plant minefields at the border. Like
Yeah,
you
exactly.
it just seems like a ludicrous way to
That's
handle it.
that's a simple, yeah. I mean, a little bit more, draconian, a little more extreme. But you're absolutely right about that. That if the government decided that they were going to landmine the Mexican border, I could objectively say that's a bad idea. That I mean, well, we could draw on other countries and other wars
Well, to
where
say
people
I don't know what to
leave
do about this
landmines
issue.
flying
I
around
don't know
for
what they're
decades.
basically saying. I don't know what to do about this issue. I just don't ever want to see it.
Yeah, that's exactly what their take seems to have been about that. So,
And
but
I will desecrate my township to prevent seeing it,
right,
because that's all it is, because it's not
yeah,
not doing anything. All you're doing is you're driving them out of sight. And to
that's
be
exactly
honest,
right.
only out of sight for if you're frequenting that area, because again, they're going somewhere. They're in sight for someone,
Exactly.
just not the lawmakers, I guess. It's a hard like
It's a hard, that's a heartless, that's the other thing. Sometimes when you look at legislation, you have to say who voted for that, because that is some heartless legislation right there. That is really taking the human out of humanity. That's
yeah,
just
it's cruel.
it's cruel. It is cruel. It's incredibly cruel, especially to do it in the summer, because you know what you're doing at that point. You know the reason that they're there. You're forcing people to endure unprecedented heat where they could die. Because I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you don't have a home. You don't know why anyone is there trying to get out of the heat. You're basically forcing them either into areas that are not as conducive to survival, and you're willingly doing so just so you don't have to see them, just so you don't have to encounter it, because it leaves a bad taste in your mouth that capitalism isn't working out here. You don't like that the way of life that you ascribe to doesn't seem to be working out for these people, and therefore I want them to go away so that I could go back and drink my coffee in peace and pretend that my system that I govern in is working as it should.
Yeah, that it's
So,
working for everyone.
right,
Yeah,
that it's working for everyone.
it's yeah. I mean, the more that kind of settles in, you ask like who voted for this, and my mind, yeah, it goes to that, but it also goes to at what point did you decide these people weren't human? Like, at what point did you decide that you could just brush someone off in that way? Would you do that to anyone else that was in need? Like, is it what about them allows you to classify them in your mind differently? If someone, I don't know, like if someone had needed your help, would you disregard it in the same way? It's just like an interesting way to categorize someone so that you can feel better about a decision to disregard them.
All right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
It's a rough
like,
look.
it's
But
one thing to not, it's one thing to say like, we have homeless people, I don't know what to do about it, I'm going to
Mhm.
pass the buck to the next administration. Like, that's what happens because we still have homeless people, no one's solving it.
Right.
And that's as horrific as that is. I guess it's become normalized to a sense, but to drive them out, and you're saying other cities do it too.
They do. Yeah.
You find what's a magnet, and then you break it.
I mean, I think that here's the thing. I think this is the way you would assuage it if you were in government and you were taking some flack. You would simply say, at least this is what I would say. I would say, well, we are providing homeless shelters, and we want them to use these shelters in those areas, and not idle in these areas, in the public square where it's made for the public. So it's that's another interesting when you really go into it that way. It's like this is a square for the people of this town. The homeless are still people of that town. They kind of deserve to be able to hang out in your square that is paid for by the taxpayer. It is interesting
I guess if
treat it as if it's private.
as long
Yeah.
as you're not on the lowest rung of society.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're not deterring tourism that the town needs for to make its revenue goals. But yeah,
Well,
so
it's interesting. Like, why wouldn't you instead invest research into, survey the homeless population in your town and say, what's going on? How did you get
oh,
here?
that's a very kind and
What,
well reasoned. That's a very nice approach that
and
you
then
got there.
address
Good
the
job,
systemic
Jamie.
issues that
Yeah.
have led to this. And hope, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm really naive. I'm sure it's a complicated issue, and maybe the help would be rejected outright. I don't know. But
Mhm.
like, what has led people to this circumstance, and can it be remedied in some way?
Well, I think it is. It's interesting. It's telling that when I brought up this town, your first thought was, "Oh, they have a huge what do you call it? Like a homeless, like a
They had
tent?
a tent city
Yeah,
in the
tent
woods.
city.
It was like a tent city, and I remember that being the thing. I mean, Lakewood is in the news for various reasons,
Mhm.
and that was one of them.
But it's interesting that that's a known thing that everyone just lives like you. Just all were like, "Oh yeah, Lakewood has a tent city,"
Well, I lived on a bordering town back in the day, so
Right, right. But I'm just
I
saying,
was.
like, was it ever talked about from your town? Like, did anyone ever say, maybe we should, was it just sort of like, well, it's a tent city. That's just what it is. It's a place
I
that
mean,
people can.
do you worry about what's happening in other towns? I mean, like, in terms
Oh
of,
yeah, of course.
we know what's happening in other towns, but do
Yeah.
you overly concern yourself with the problems of other towns when your town has its own problems?
Jamie, I don't know if you know this, but I live in North Jersey, which is basically just one massive city that has been chopped up into a million different principalities, as if we
Hmm.
live in some sort of weird feudalistic, lordship.
When
So
you were in
yeah,
Brooklyn, were you overly concerned with Staten Island?
no one in New York City is overly concerned with Staten Island. That's the problem with the question you just asked. The premise is something that is untenable. I mean,
Mm.
it's if I live in Brooklyn, am I concerned with the housing prices of Manhattan? Sure, because that means that in Brooklyn, eventually the runoff will come over to us. But in terms of yeah, I mean, Staten Island is its own. I mean, we're always like they should just sort of branch off and be their own city. They should do what they should do what they want down there.
No, I would say that we want towns to look after their economy and their infrastructure and their school systems, because you you could form regions that are if you can get a regional culture, a regional um favorable perception, then obviously that drives everyone's home values up, and that benefits everyone.
Well, there you go.
But you don't have any power over other towns, and townships are like, I don't know if I was going to say like super corrupt, because you
Mm.
have people having no show jobs, double dipping into various pensions, and there's a lot of stuff that goes around. And it's, yes, I'm concerned with Lakewood and a lot of towns in New Jersey, but you know our towns have their own issues too. Like, how much of me is there to go around?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, this does kind of bring me back to something you mentioned a while ago when I was talking about um, low income housing. You said that some towns banded together back in the day in order to pay off other towns to take low income housing so that they didn't have to shoulder that
Yeah.
burden. So I would just say, so there is some sort of collusion that does occur on the level with towns around in Jersey.
Yeah, like you have in Monmouth County, right? I
Hmm.
know that the school systems band together, and they have this like freehold regional type thing where you could live in any town, but you could send your kid to, if they I guess get accepted into specialist schools that are really highly rated in the nation.
Hmm.
Um, and like biotech or something like that. And but you can live in any of the towns, but you can go to that school, and that's really unique. But it's an area where the towns banded together. Now their region is like an academic powerhouse.
Interesting.
Um, in Lakewood specifically, it is a very depressed town economically.
Hmm.
In fact, they get a pass on tax. If you go there, it's like a 3% sales tax that you pay, or 3.5%, whatever it is. I think maybe Jersey City has something similar. So certain towns, if they don't meet some threshold, are allowed to just charge a smaller percentage for sales tax, which again, people then go there to spend money because
Hmm.
the things are just inherently cheaper.
Interesting. All right. Well, I mean, watch this space. This show is called Retraction. If listeners, if you have any more information, if you know something a little bit, a little more about how the homeless situation is maybe turning up in your neck of the woods, and you want to share with us, hit us up, because this would be something that I would love to be more educated on. To be honest, just what's exactly how, what is out there? What is the cutting edge in terms of solving homelessness? We hear a lot of things. I hear a lot of different things. I mean, if you go to like the ideal, you've got people out there who are promoting free housing as a right. Housing is a right. You're adding that into like the Charter of Human Rights. One is to be lodged, to be to be secure in that you could always go back to a home. And then in this country in particular, I think this is one of the big VA problems, is that in order to get free housing or sheltered living, you have to be clean. You cannot be alcoholic, or you cannot indulge in any sort of drugs, what have you. And that holds a lot of people out, especially if you have mental illness, for instance, and you might be self-medicating with what you can get your hands on.
Instead of giving them further support, instead of saying, okay, you need help in two areas, housing and health. We just say, I'm sorry, your health situation kind of disqualified you from the housing. Now you're just out on both.
I'm sorry, you're SOL. You're not perfect. So you can't get this ideal. You can't get the.
Sorry, we can only deal with one hard time at a time. You can't be falling on multiple hard times. Sorry.
I hate to break it to you, sir, but we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We're providing the housing.
As if you're in this situation because of some complex issue, right? We only deal with one-dimensional issues here. You got to only have one part of your situation that needs to be fixed. Right. If you're happen to have an addiction issue because you're depressed, because you've fallen on hard times, therefore you lost your house, your family, your job, whatever.
Anything. It doesn't even matter.
Whatever it may be. It's just an interesting way of looking at it. You give yourself these easy outs to not have to deal with it by saying, I would have helped you. I wanted to help you, but you just didn't help yourself enough in this one area. Come back when you're ready.
Well, I think that it's a systematic issue with this country in general, in that people have to be perfect, yet corporations are and government is wildly allowed to be imperfect. They can make mistakes. They can,
You don't get drug tested and tested for alcohol sobriety when you go for mortgages or anything
finance
like
job.
That.
Nope.
No, you don't. There's none of that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, not you. What are you talking about? But like in general, society. What are you talking about? Like, the people that are most susceptible to these things, you're holding them to a higher standard when arguably they need more help in that area than anyone else. It's just what's your out to take the edge off when you're under stress? People do things and they're under a lot of stress. That's. Like I said, treating them subhuman, and I don't understand why. I don't know why we say it. Is it a fear? Like, I don't want to look at it because it's some reflection on like my beliefs and why I allow my ideology to foster that.
I think because
I'm afraid of it, and so I don't want to deal with it.
Well, it shows a failing on both sides, especially of the ideological political spectrum. You've got, whether you're in a left-leaning town, you've got homeless people. Whether you're in a right-leaning town, you've got homeless people, and both sides can't figure out how to solve this problem, because both sides ascribe to a base level of how things are to be run in this this culture in this country. So. It breaks the mold. It's like it's if they're homeless, the old ideology was that it's their fault. It's because we provide all the opportunity in the world to get an education, to get a job, to get that white picket fence in the suburbs. It's all on you. You just gotta want it. And if you don't want it, well, I mean that's a fail. That's a moral failing of your lack of work ethic. That's the.
Or if you've been injured or have cognitive decline or anything else. Yeah, it's just like an absurd thing to say.
That's an absurd way. Yeah. So I'm saying if you have to throw that theory out, the next theory is that maybe the system doesn't really work as you believe it to be. But that's a conversation for another time. What's going on in your neck of the woods?
All right. I don't know if I'm going to really go any upbeat on here, so maybe you want to close with something small. But
okay. I
AP article titled "How AI-Powered Tech Landed Man in Jail with Scant Evidence."
Okay.
So this story takes place in Chicago, where last August, Michael Williams was jailed after being accused of killing someone that asked him for a ride home during a night of civil unrest over police brutality. As the title plainly states, the evidence didn't come from a witness. It came from a clip of noiseless security video showing a car driving through an intersection and a loud bang picked up by a network of surveillance microphones. So prosecutors basically used secret algorithms that analyzed the noises and determined that Williams shot and killed the man. So Williams sat behind bars for nearly a year before the judge dismissed the case against him on the grounds of insufficient evidence. There's much more to this about Michael and his situation and how it turned out and how it got there. So I encourage everyone to go to the article. I'll promote it and I'll post it in promotion of this episode, so you can go check it out if you want to. But now I want to pull it up a level, and that law enforcement is turning to gunshot detection companies more and more to battle crime, spending over $6.9 million. And they've had around 200 court cases nationwide admitting this type of data into evidence. They mount acoustic sensors on buildings, telephone poles, streetlights. But an AP investigation based on internal and confidential documents and interviews with dozens of public defenders shows that there are serious flaws in this technology. For example, the system can miss live gunfire right under the microphone. If that wasn't enough, it can misclassify fireworks, dumpsters, trucks, motorcycles, helicopters, construction, trash pickup, church bells, and cars backfiring as gunshots. If that wasn't enough,
That's a lot.
Employees can change sound sources after listening to audio recordings, which introduces bias. If that wasn't enough, employees can also change the number of shots fired at the request of police. And in some cases, the police themselves can make the change.
So what about
this?
You got to say? Actually, what about this is AI? Like, what is a robot doing here? What's going on here?
So one company,
like we need Google's chatbot to come in and start to self-aware itself in this sector.
Well, basically, if you ask the technology if it's AI, it says yes, I'm AI. That's
okay.
That's what it is.
Well,
it's programmed to say it.
I don't know if it says anything because it looks like it's not doing anything at this point. I feel like someone paid a lot of money to just have people running around self-identifying what's going on here.
Isn't it insane how tainted it could be, how corrupted it could be? And that's saying that's not even saying that it's a stable system to begin with, but you can just go in and make these like systemic changes based on your opinion.
Yeah.
What's the point of using the tech? But anyway.
Well, I mean that's the problem with these situations, because at the end of the day, someone is going to still stand up at a conference, you know, some sort of media gala or something, and they're going to tout the amazing advances in technology, and they're going to hide behind machine learning, like all these machine learning and AI have done all this impressive stuff, and in the back room, you know, there's a human behind the curtain. It's like I'm saying for that robot that broke that boy's finger. There's a man in there. It's not a robot. There's a man in there. Same thing here. It's a lot of different people, a lot of different men running around pretending to be robots. But really, it's just the same age-old, like you said, age-old bias of the human condition. But anyway, go on.
Or it's even worse than that. They don't like what the AI is spitting out, so they're going in and doing manual overrides. Oh, I don't like what this is saying, so I need to alter the sources of this noise and things. You know, you don't know what's going on.
They should give the robot a voice. When you start doing that, the robot's like, "Stop it!
Please, no!
Please, no! Don't touch me!
It hurts." My algorithm. Anyway,
good one.
One company, ShotSpotter, boasts proprietary algorithms, but they have not been scrutinized by any oversight body, academics, or experts, unlike DNA and ballistic tools that have had their methodologies examined in painstaking detail for decades. But that hasn't stopped the tech from being deployed in 119 American cities, specifically 18,000 sensors in neighborhoods that police deem to be at high risk for gun violence, which, unsurprisingly, is disproportionately Black and Latino communities.
I'm sorry, did I miss this? Who is the architect of this machine, getting it to proliferate in this way, to get into so many different police departments?
Oh, well, right now it's just tech, but I'm actually going to get to that in a minute.
Okay, because I feel like Yeah, because that's kind of, here's the thing, that's a crazy adoption rate, which makes me question who is actually the agent behind promoting this robot. For some reason, I feel like there's some nepotism possibly going on here. This agent is either the son of a police chief that's quite prominent in this country, or something. My point is, it's very difficult to get into, especially old, tried and true arms of the government, like for instance the police. They're not the most cutting edge. They're usually not the first ones to adopt something like this, wholehandedly or readily, unless it's being either off, like it's what do you call it? It's either like surplus from like the FBI or the CIA or something. Like they're dropping it down to police departments now after they've had their fill of it. But anyway, go on. You'll get to that.
Yeah, we definitely will get to that. So to address your AI bit, additionally, ShotSpotter acquired a predictive policing company called HunchLab that integrates AI models with the gunshot sensors to predict crime before it happens. This guides patrols to deploy in certain neighborhoods, or some would say that totally harass those people, because how it almost brings me back. We did an episode a while back on this Florida sheriff who like hired some dude to like build some like algorithm where it would predict. Do you remember? We would predict crime, yes. And he was like, all it did, he was like harassing people for their hedges being too long, and it was like this crazy story that we did, and that was ages ago.
Yeah.
But this is like that on steroids, where now you have like these people actually, because crime had happened in the past, I assume, they're saying it's more likely to happen again and continue to happen. And so they patrol it more heavily. And again, almost going back to the homeless issue that we were just talking about, instead of figuring out why the crime is happening and putting your resources into fixing that, you are just going to continue to penalize them. Yeah. And it's like, that doesn't work, right? Obviously, more patrolling isn't working. All you're doing is kind of driving up your fines.
Yeah.
And it's a revenue opportunity at that point. So there you go. So other than noise detection algorithms, which is kind of scary, other AI uses include prison sentencing and probation rules, and all of those lack transparency and oversight. I had no idea. It's almost an interesting thing, because I had said, at one point, wouldn't it be cool someday when we're ready if people could have more influence in almost a pure democracy sense to vote more issues and take the representatives out of it. But in that case, you would need almost like an AI to learn you over time so that it can act on your behalf on mundane issues. But this is like the worst part of that. This is like doing it in its infancy.
I feel like you were about to do a Freudian slip there. I feel like you were about to say, take back the republic.
I think I almost said Republicans instead of representatives.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to your question, proponents of this tech, law enforcement, it says it can increase their capacity, right? They're able to do more because they can be smarter, quote unquote, smarter, right? It speeds up response time because of the predictive element, and because it alerts them right away. You got sensors everywhere. You don't have to wait for someone to call 911. You know immediately. All that stuff. There's like a whole headquarters where these companies are stationed, where it has the big monitors everywhere, and all these alerts are coming in as they happen. And it does all of this at a lower cost that can help cash-strapped communities. So instead of increasing your force to deal with your high crime, you can deploy this and deploy people again in a quote unquote smarter way. Now, here's what maybe surprise you. In June, Biden encouraged mayors to use American Rescue Plan funds to buy gunshot detection systems to stop gun violence, most likely as a reaction maybe to the horrific school shooting we saw in May. And in late July, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced a new initiative while touring a police precinct that was demonstrating ShotSpotter. So ShotSpotter says it consistently is fine-tuning its machine learning model, and it claims that its system is already 97% accurate. But I mean, 3% can be a lot of people, a lot of innocent people that are being harmed by this.
You keep expounding the numbers and the fact that the more it gets deployed and then the more people it has to interact with. If that number doesn't go down because it's learning, then you're going to have a massive problem. 3% of 365 million people is too many at that level. But I would ask one other thing: is there any guarantee that this thing is only listening for gunshots?
No, I mean nothing. That wasn't addressed.
Of course not. So, but you would think that would be one thing that would be at the forefront to say, this is not spying on everyday Americans. It's not just listening indiscriminately for conversations at one point in time that may or may not be used against you in a court of law, depending on what is picked up in those conversations. This machine can only
Antoine,
activate.
they're just selling it to Amazon. They're just selling that data set to Amazon, and you're just getting ads. It's making your consumer life more enjoyable, Antoine.
Gotcha.
That's all it is.
Gotcha.
If you're talking about
I'm just saying, at
buying
least you
something, you start getting notifications of it. That's all.
I feel like if you're going to do something nefarious, at least you could unplug Alexa in your home. Yeah, this thing is just out there, and they basically could say, hey, you were in public, you were in the public sphere. This is a listening device cataloging conversations that you just happen to have committed we think you committed a crime. We listen back to this catalog, triangulating where you were at a certain point, and we pick this up. I'm concerned. This is actually really concerning as to how much this thing is actually picking up, and who is in charge of what it actually can and can't pick up. Because at this point, it looks like the police are in charge. Which, like you said, they can alter it, they can augment it based on human. What they think is the appropriate response that the machine should have made at a certain point, and not what the machine's actual response was, which is really concerning. I'm saying that there's a lot of privacy concerns that are starting to flood in here that I think the Biden administration, I get their zeal to protect Americans, especially American children, from school shootings. I don't know, maybe looking at gun legislation first would be the most obvious response. But I get it. This is America. We don't do the obvious.
It's that type of talk. It's that type of talk that gets you to lose your trees.
It is, isn't it?
Keep talking like that, and you're not gonna have any trees on your property.
That's exactly right.
But you bring up an even more interesting point. As that tech advances, who's to say that it can't be turned onto your private property? I mean, this stuff can be posted right outside of your home.
It can be anywhere. Yeah, you have no idea.
What's to say it doesn't pick up stuff, doesn't see stuff that's happening on your private
property?
There's
no reason that you could not turn this on to say, hey, we think this guy is a mob boss. And that we just happen to put it on his public telephone pole, like your whatever that line for electricity that's outside of a suburban house. I don't know what its real name is. Let's just put it there outside of this man's property. But I don't know what the frequency. I don't know how far this thing can pick up. Next thing you know, you're picking up conversations that this guy is having on his porch, or maybe right in his foyer, or maybe it could get somewhere all the way to his dining room table, and you just happen to pick it up. Is this admissible now in a court of law? Because I mean, like, where does this stuff come in? Or you don't even have to admit that you've done it. You don't have to submit it into court because you know that there might be a challenge here, a legal challenge here. So you just hold it in your back pocket and use it to catch him doing, like, to get him somewhere, like, to entrap this person further down the line because you have advanced intel. Like, I mean, this is all sorts of uncomfortable, is what I'm trying to get at, people. This is what I'm getting at. All right, everyone. I'm uncomfortable. My heart's starting to flutter. I'm feeling a little like, I'm verklempt, right? Like, I'm feeling.
They could be listening right now, Antoine. They could be listening.
But yeah, I'm feeling uneasy about this technology. I think that this could go a lot of different ways, and it starts off nice enough, just like Skynet. Starts off nice enough doing a defense plan. It's supposed to be doing one thing, and then next thing you know, it's doing something completely different. I think this is just what the government does these days. They really do. They just let these things launch off without any type of due process, like some sort of like vigorous testing by a third party, nonetheless, to say, what can this thing actually do? What can we hack it? Like, for hackers, for instance, just what can we hack and make it do? So that someone who even just has some level of intel as to the inner workings of this device can also make it do. How far can we push it? These are important questions.
Secure nature of it is interesting. How much data is it collecting on people?
Yeah.
How much identifiable data is it collecting that can be hacked and used to steal your identity?
Well, there's that too. There's absolutely, without a doubt, there's aspects of that. And how are they networked? Exactly. There's so many questions that this thing just throws out there that are not being addressed in the articles you're talking about.
Well, the fact that it's not scrutinized by anyone, the fact that they're allowed to say, no, private company, you don't get to have eyes on it. Do you want it or not? Like, that's
crazy.
That's the
too.
Issue, right? That's a huge issue.
That's always my concern with these contracts for private
because
entities.
They go on to say, right, that they claim that it's only whether or not this is how it's actually being used is another story, whether or not it's being overly relied on by law enforcement. But the companies say that it's only meant to be a starting point, and that it's not to be the entirety of your case. It's not meant to be the entirety of your evidence. And so I want to go back to that point in a second, but I will say that opponents of this, which shouldn't be any surprise.
Yeah. Well, I
but,
mean, here's the thing: they could say that, but we've done many episodes. We did a whole episode on guilt, and where we talked about how confession rates, even if someone is confessing under absolute duress, where they've been held up for 3 nights in a row, 2 nights in a row, no sleep. Did you do this? Did you do this? And if the person says yes even once, that's enough to sway a jury. So when they come out and say that's so disingenuous to say, oh, this is just the tipping point, this shouldn't be the full investigation. It's like, but that's not how human nature works, and that's definitely not how it's going to work when you play this in a jury trial. Either the information you've collected, if it is an audio information or what have you, to link this person having shot a gun or a gunshot. If you could tell the jury of a trial that this man was on this corner and this device, especially this amazing robotic device, this AI, this sophisticated AI that is top of the line and is like nouveau de nouveau, it said that this gunshot happened and this man was there. How many jurors in America are going to be like, oh, well, I mean, can we trust AI? can we trust the robot? Can we trust the analytics? No, they're going to be swayed by the analytics. They're going to be swayed by the data. They're going to be swayed by the convincingness of the.
Especially if they don't understand it.
Exactly.
Especially if they're like, I don't know. This is like.
Is it going to be all computer engineers? Is it going to be
because
all
it's
guys?
a lot of it's like it sees you passing an intersection, right? This is one of the examples from the article. It was like the dude was like passing through an intersection, but so was another car. But from the video, the person who went back to watch it thought that the windows looked rolled up, and the gunshot came from this vicinity. So they triangulated the vicinity of the audio and said it happened around these intersections. These 2 cars ran this. That's not looking good. And one of them, the windows looked up. So it must have been the other car. And that other car was Michael Williams.
Wow.
And so like, that's how they, and that's just like a little bit of how they came to this, but it's a lot of assumption and likeliness and like percentages, statistics. And, I don't know about that, but opponents of this
it's
one
pseudoscience at the end of the day. I mean, that's what really we're working with here. A lot of AI is pseudoscience because I mean, you're going to say that if you're a prosecutor, you're going to present that as a fact. You're going to say, you're not going to say this car appeared to have its windows down. You're going to say this car had its windows down. We could see it clearly here in the video.
Right? Prove me wrong.
Well, exactly. Prove it. And how do you prove me wrong? Because it's all video captured via this. There's not going to be a competing camera. That's the thing. The defense
and then it's
is
like,
not.
Who else was there? Well, I don't know. Maybe this thing got the triangulation wrong. Maybe it was too short.
Maybe it's timestamps we're not coded properly.
And there's no cameras over there. Maybe the cameras had a blind spot and there was another car over there.
There's nothing competing. There's nothing competing to say that this was wrong. There's not going to be a person who had their cell phone up at the exact same time to say, oh no, these windows are up. This AI is you coded it to UTC. We're on Eastern Standard Time. It's 3 hours off. That was 3 hours ago. That like it's there's nobody who's going to be able to make those kinds of assessments on the technology. So you're going to have to take it at face value. And at that point, I mean, that's like a slam dunk case. I mean, the best thing for a prosecutor at this point to have in this era is to have robots that they could just point to say the robot said he did it, therefore he did it. Most people are just going to go with that because they're going to be like wowed by the technology. It's like, well, the robot said so. Obviously,
kill my avatar.
Well, I'm just saying, this is crazy. Honestly, the more we talk about it, the more insane this appears, and the fact that they're gonna start adding this into like the justice system in like
it's there. It's there.
Well, the fact that it's there is that's also incredible considering how aged the justice system is, how aged law happens to be, not modernized at all. The fact that we can't even talk about what a monopoly is for a company that runs a freaking search engine. There aren't enough laws on the books for anyone to understand that Google is the search engine of like the world, right? Like there's no law that can really understand that because that's how old laws are. And now you're telling me that a robot is going to say who shot who? Come on now, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. Anyway, go
on. Wait till they give that robot wheels and a gun. So opponents. One being a study in the peer-reviewed Journal of Urban Health examined 68 metropolitan areas from 1999 to 2016 and found that this tech does not reduce gun violence or increase community safety. which is basically at the end of the day just amounts to harassment and effective penalties, if not outright wrongful prosecution. So I wanted to kind of pose a few questions here. One, I think maybe naive at this point, but is society moving too quickly dependent on algorithms? Or is society too quickly becoming dependent on algorithms to make consequential decisions about our lives, right? And maybe the question is, should society ever depend on algorithms to make consequential decisions? Will it ever be? Is it a matter of confidence, or is it a matter of we should never relinquish that to a machine?
There needs to be competition. It's not a question of whether we can ever get to a point where we can trust the machines. That's fine. Whether you want to trust them. I mean,
it removes bias to a degree, but there's bias in the coding, as we've discussed before on the pod.
Of course there's bias in the coding because machines are built by man. So there's going to be that inherent bias. There's no way to really parse out that bias because there's no governing body that is assessing how these machines were built, which we talked about in another episode.
That was another question I had. Should there be a governing body to regulate?
I've addressed that there needs to be a governing body that is not under the hood of, like, I don't know, the police state, so that they don't feel
like, should this company have sought out a license, registered their AI, sought out a license, and had it reviewed, looked under the hood, right?
I said that. I've talked about that, if there was an independent oversight committee that assesses whether AI has the potential to become sentient. That's
a couple episodes, folks. Couple episodes ago.
Most likely, this is with the Lambda, over the whole Lambda thing. The right Lambda chatbot, I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've said that we need something like that, and we need that oversight committee to be completely independent of either some sort of tech there's no tech influence whatsoever needs to be on that committee, which means that maybe you do not hire people who are former people who've worked at some of the biggest companies. Maybe you are only sourcing people that have been academics, for instance, who have either sat mostly in academia, and allow them time to train up and figure whatever they need to do. My point is that you want this to be as free from influence as is possible, and especially when you talk about law enforcement, definitely make sure that they are not housed within any type of law enforcement whatsoever, so that way they can evaluate the technology independently and fairly. Look at it for bias, for instance. That's one of the other things. So yeah, is it sentient? Sure. No, most likely it's not going to be. How much bias is possibly baked into this technology? Make a report, send that report to Congress, let the public see that report, make a big deal about it, have it be, have the media outlets hit it up, so everyone's aware that, of what's actually going on out there. And I think these things, the transparency is necessary. You cannot have these private organizations building these technologies behind doors, giving it to the public sphere, and the public sphere then turning it against the population as if it's like God said, as if it's like the 10 Commandments. That's insane. You need to look at how these things are being built. What is the coding behind it? Someone independent needs to evaluate, is this coding even right? Like, is this coding even fair? Does it make any sense whatsoever? And then, of course, the controls. The controls are a completely other thing. If you have police officers tweaking this machine to either say this is a gunshot or this isn't a gunshot, that is not the way that this AI should. First of all, this AI should probably have been battle tested by being sent to war zones so that it could hear every type of like gunfire. That human beings can create.
If it had to be tweaked, it wasn't ready.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you have to go in and be like, oh, it got the source wrong, let me fix that. No, it got the source wrong. I want to return this, please.
Yeah.
Give me my money back.
Yeah, no,
that's not working.
I think you raised that's an amazing flag right there. That's a huge red flag right there. Is that too often in tech? This is the thing. This is a private tech workflow to implement a device and then have the user course correct it. That's fine when we're talking about, I don't know, a robot that is identifying different types of flowers in a farm, or something very like non-consequential.
My Roomba, where I'm like, sure, I'll go over there and I give it a little kick.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. It's cleaning a house. A robot that cleans the house is the tech.
The stakes need to be low. The stakes be low.
super low. Not whether a guy is going to go to jail for the remainder of his life because a robot
Or you're going to
identified.
tarnish, or he's going to sit in jail for a year, and you
Yeah,
just tarnished his reputation, destroyed his job prospects, ruined his family to a degree, and then you say, "Oh yeah, my bad, dude."
no, the robot got it wrong. Sorry, man.
Yeah, it wasn't even it. The judges threw it out because there was insufficient evidence. Dude never probably even got an apology. So,
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
it's terrible. So there's that, and then I do want to. So I do want to.
More?
No, there's not. But I do want to pose one more question because, and I think we may have touched on it, and I think it's probably a regulatory committee. I think it's probably got to be tested, right? And it's got to be reviewed. The code has to be tested and reviewed. The technology then has to be deployed and tested and really put through rigorous evaluation.
Yeah, put through the ringer, sure.
But I was like, what else? Because I didn't want, and I'm glad you kind of are open to it, because I didn't want to like poo-poo the idea entirely. I think that, using technology to aid our civil pursuits is important, right? Because the more human error we can take out of it, as long as we're confident in the coding, I think that could be beneficial to us. But the real question is, how do you get it right? But then there's always going to be that human operator aspect. And so do you think maybe now that I think we've kind of organically agreed that there is a proper use case to help communities for this technology, conceptually at least, maybe not in its current state, but conceptually, the idea of it could be beneficial. But then there needs to be some type of effective training and ethical guidelines for its operation, for its deployment. And it's one thing to check it when it's in the factory, which would be that regulatory committee. But then once it's deployed and once it's in practice, how do you make sure that it's both being operated effectively, but also interpreted in court and things like that? People are reading the data when you're presenting it. You're not allowed to misrepresent it in court, like making sure that the ethics all around are being adhered to.
Well, I mean, I think that question is kind of beyond me. I mean, I don't think I can answer that question. I think that's something that will come with time, would
that hold it up? Is it like, you got to have it all? You can't, because people's lives are at stake. You gotta figure all of that out.
I think that's fine.
Or can you deploy it first?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I mean, the fact that we could sit around saying that this is of the utmost urgency in a country that has had gun violence for the better part of, I don't know, since its freaking founding, is a bit ridiculous. So can we take some more time and a couple more years to refine it? Sure. There is definitely nothing about, this needs to be handled, this needed to be done yesterday. Because even the Biden administration talking about school shootings. I mean, Columbine was what, 1997, 98? I mean, come on now, come off of it. I mean, I'm done with this. I mean, the politicians who go off of like there's urgency to this matter. I mean, we've had mass shootings in schools for the past freaking 20 years. No one's done anything really about it. So don't come in here and start saying that, this needs to happen yesterday. We need this type of AI.
I think people want action. I think people want.
People have always wanted action. People have wanted action for 20 years. That's my point.
And I think the danger of demanding immediate action is you might accept subpar quality action, and it's an attractive technology, right?
I mean, there's only when there's an incentive to the politician to do that, because again, no one cares about the people, because people have wanted action for forever, and you've got nothing. So politicians don't come in here and try to pretend like you care about people when it comes to this stuff. Gun violence, gun makers, corporations completely have you guys when it comes to looking at the gun issue. So
I mean, you're right. You could cut straight to the Second Amendment, guns in themselves.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, if you want, if you really want. Yeah, there's a lot of easier things to do than self-testing out artificial intelligence.
Then running the public as guinea pigs through a technology that will incarcerate them for life if they get it wrong.
Don't come around here talking about you're trying to protect these communities. No one's giving a crap about these communities. These communities, like, it's not like the gun violence in these communities has spiked. Even if it has spiked, but you need to look at it over the long tail. I'm sure that these communities that we're talking about have had gun violence for 30, 40 years.
Well, it said the peer-reviewed study from 1999 to 2016, gun violence did not decrease. Communities were not safer where this technology was deployed.
I'm glad that someone's out there actually doing the research, because we're not even well versed.
And the thing is, we're coming to the
same conclusion.
That's peer-reviewed. You can't even say that there's a counter to that, because you could have various studies that contradict one another. That's where you need consensus. but they won't even let anyone review under the hood. They won't
Of
let
course
anyone
not,
look
because
under
it's
the hood. So
private.
you have
Yeah.
their stats that are
Right.
uncheckable versus a peer-reviewed evaluation.
And almost nobody trusts the in-house stats. For instance, I mean, you know, everyone, if anyone's familiar with GPUs or CPUs, when you talk about like AMD or Nvidia, they always have their in-house benchmarks that anyone who does analysis in this sector completely disregards. They're like, well, we'll test it when we get to the actual test bench, because their metrics you can't trust. You can't trust
What's
the company itself.
What is it, like under perfect conditions when the
Exactly.
room
Well,
is at a certain
that's what you're going to
temperature,
do.
and
Well,
it's
I mean,
like
you
you'll
got to
never
sell
operate
something.
like that.
Exactly. Well, that's the problem. These guys who are creating this AI need to sell it. So of course they're going to give you the best picture of their product, because this is capitalism. That's how it works. It's not based on whether this thing actually operates to the best it can in the field. It's about how much you could sell and market this thing to get it into as many hands as possible, therefore upping your own profit margin. That being said, when you were talking, I did start to think a little bit about a better way that this could be used and allowed it to test. If this was a notification to 911 first, not the police necessarily to go in and investigate, but a call to ambulances and emergency rooms to say that there's been a gunshot at this area, send an ambulance. And then when the ambulance gets there, then they could verify. I mean, that then they could maybe feed back something to say, yeah, we have a victim here.
Police would always accompany an ambulance to a
Not
gun
always. That's
shot
crazy.
thing,
No,
right?
I'm telling you right now. I mean, if you talk to, especially Brooklyn
Oh, that's
paramedics,
shocking.
they're going in. They're usually the
That
first on
seems
the scene.
dangerous.
It is
Jeez.
dangerous. Paramedics talk. I mean, the paramedics are usually alcoholics in some sense because of the pressures of the job. And yeah, they arrive. They're usually first on the scene. And paramedics talk about being shot at. They talk about tons of things like this. I mean, it's a grueling job
terrible.
that is not paid.
I had no idea.
Commensurate with how much they put their lives on the line. But again, not saying that that the gunshots have happened.
I got a better one for you.
Sure,
I got a better one for you. So now, because now you're getting into this, and what immediately went into my head was the misclassifications: fireworks, dump trucks, motorcycles, helicopters, construction, trash pickup, church bells, cars backfiring. I wonder if they could isolate something that's less threatening and then deploy help for one of those, or in some way test it where, okay, we're just going to identify fireworks, or we're just going to identify broken down cars, or we're just going to identify something else, and then just test that and deploy. Like you could say, okay, every time we hear a helicopter, we're going to send an alert, and then we're going to check the flight patterns and make sure that that's always a helicopter. Do you know what I mean? Like all these misfirings that you're clearly picking up,
you want
identify those process. And then just run it like that instead of.
I mean, it's more costly to do that. I don't think that, and that does not necessarily guarantee you the results you're looking for. By eliminating what it isn't, does not mean that it will get better at identifying what it is. If that makes sense.
But I'm saying, if you can, so you're picking up all these other things. Is it a gunshot inherently more difficult to identify than a helicopter? If you're confusing the two, can you say, okay, what we're going to do now is focus on helicopters. I want to identify all the helicopters that fly over this city and identify their flight pattern through our microphones and stuff.
Yeah, but
and then then after that, check the flight patterns of all the helicopters, right? And say, okay, yes, we successfully tracked it.
I'm just saying, is that a way you could do it? Sure, but it's definitely more costly. And at the end of the day, all I'm saying is it's far easier to just go and check out when it identifies a gunshot, and then to say that wasn't actually a gunshot. That is a much
ambulance, right? I mean, that's a lot.
Well,
isn't it?
Yeah, that's my point. Is that I hear your way is I don't want to say safer. You know what? Look, it's your way is fine if you want to take on those costs. It's a government issue. Can government shoulder the cost of basically eliminating all other sounds that are close to gunshots, so that it gets better at identifying what a real gunshot is? Which is just, I'm just saying, it's just harder because there's going to be an opposition, especially if you're going to critique government spending and time. There's going to be the opposition that's going to say it's actually a lot easier. Why aren't you just looking for why aren't you just going out when there's a gunshot? Why are you going out for all these other things? You're like, why are you spending so much money and time?
And it's not just identifying the gunshot, because that's just the audio part. They use the video to try and understand, well, who shot,
right?
And where did the shot come from, and that kind of stuff. And there's that whole
aspect that's an issue.
There's that whole thing,
Again, if it was still, I want more confirmation to say that this is all it can listen for, and that it is only looking at that particular thing, and there is no capacity for this thing.
See, I
to
see it
start
even, I see it
recording.
going into the other direction. I see it accessing car computers and things like that to understand, was your window rolled up or down?
Yeah, these things
You
could
know,
happen. These things could happen. I mean, yeah, you never know. You never know. I mean, there is a what is that? The snowball effect? Are they? What is that? The slippery slope? Yeah, I mean, there's a slippery slope definitely to the situation. We need to learn more. And again, like I'm saying, it is very concerning to hear something like this being implemented and active with so much, so many unknowns. I think that's crazy. There should not be this many unknowns. There should be so much more testing, because we want to. I mean, look at the scrutiny that people give when you talk about UBI. I mean, I don't like whataboutisms necessarily, even though I feel like I'm about to conjecture into one. But I'm just saying, something as simple. Everyone goes up in arms when you're like, "Can we give people free money?" It's like, we need to test this. We got to make sure these people are doing the right thing. It's like, can you send people to jail erroneously? Sure, but that's a byproduct of something that we need to deploy right now because of there's urgency here. You know, people who can't make ends meet due to various economic systems that are affecting their livelihood is not an urgency. But people who've lived in essentially, I don't, war torn is what's coming to my head, but high high crime rate areas for the better part of a century, they that is all of a sudden something that is on the urgency plan. That's something that needs to be addressed without proper testing. So that there's just so much tongue in cheek that goes on in these things, in my opinion. That's my personal view on this.
well, that was that topic.
That was that one.
I
We can
think,
end on a high. I have a slight high one. We don't have to go too much into it. I brought this up just for you. I brought this in
ooh,
for you. Okay.
let
So
me take a sip,
I was perusing the Wall Street Journal as one does,
as one does.
and in digital, by the way, not print.
Is that a subscription?
It is a subscription. It is a
Okay.
subscription. I it hurts me. Why do I support the Wall Street Journal? I'm conflicted about it. Scientists move closer to unlocking the secrets of the immortal jellyfish and possibly human aging. Did you hear about that?
It's funny that you bring this topic up, but not this particular aspect, because I just read an article on zombie cells, and that was going to be my topic for today, but I opted for this one instead.
Mm,
But it's about aging as well.
mm. That's
So go ahead,
interesting.
tell
I
me.
kind of want to hear about that too. But well, just quickly on this one. So, a team of scientists in Spain has succeeded in mapping the genome of a jellyfish known for its ability to cheat death by rebirthing itself. Dubbed the immortal jellyfish, the tiny sea creature can turn its biological clock backward and revert to a clump of juvenile cells, even after reproducing sexually. I'm not sure why that is, like, why that was notable. Maybe that's something you need to know about jellyfish or know about the scientific process of reproduction. Because I'm like, why having giving birth has anything to do with whether it can rejuvenate itself? But anyway,
Well,
I
because I
digress.
assume your body goes through changes, so then
Yeah,
you
I
would
guess
have
that's
to
what I'm
almost
saying. Well, there
change
must
back
be
to
something about it. Yeah.
pre-birthing body,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I think is interesting. Yeah, not interesting, but that's got to be
I
something
mean, my
about
big question here is, does it retain its memories?
Stop it. Stop it. Just stop. What? No. No. Does anyone know what a jellyfish thinks? No, stop it. What do you? I don't know. No one knows. I mean, can you? That's like asking, do they talk? Do we talk to
Well, because then
jellyfish?
you're not really living forever, right? And
Come on,
I
man.
mean, you are, but you aren't.
Back up.
I mean,
Back up. Once back, it's just, why are you ruining the story? Let it be good. Well, I can't believe I cannot believe you're cutting this off at the knees with, well, what does the jellyfish think? Does it remember its past life? Does it remember you? Once back in its juvenile state, the jellyfish can also reproduce asexually, which is kind of interesting, by cloning polyps of itself, giving it two ways to propagate its genetic material. In a study published Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the authors said they hoped their genome mapping might lead to discoveries relevant to human aging and effort to improve the human health span. You should read the rest of the article. It's by Ginger Adam Otis and Alyssa Luckpat in the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, I just thought I felt like you of all people, I feel like this is something you would definitely have gravitated towards. You're always talking about wanting to live forever, and this might be one avenue. Even though in the article they do explicitly say that there are many avenues that need to be investigated when we're talking about human beings, because we are far more complicated than jellyfish and mice, for instance. And yes, so just the fact that this jellyfish seems to be immortal does not necessarily mean that you could just describe its life, its pattern, its genome into the human genome, and therefore make people live forever. But it's a step. It's a place that they could start in terms of investigating the possibilities of immortality. Now, as Jamie has already pointed out, all this is for naught, because if you cannot remember your past life, immortality is irrelevant, because basically Jamie is on the philosophical viewpoint that simply rebirthing the physical form is not good enough, because that is not you. That is just a representation.
I mean, it's basically just having kids. It's basically just having
right,
kids.
Yeah, right. Like I said, it's a representation of your earthly coil, and Jamie's not good with that. He wants himself. He wants all the memories. Basically, Jamie's like, unless I'm a vampire, it's a no-go.
It's like that. What was it? And Albert. Do you know Al Brooks? Is that his name? Albert Brooks. Al Brooks.
Mel Brooks or Albert?
No, not Mel Brooks. I want to say it's Albert Brooks. It's the Oh man, who is it? You know him. You know him.
Okay,
I
fine. Well, go on. What is it about Al Brooks that makes him so special?
What's not? Is it Albert Brooks? Oh no, now I need to know. It is Albert Brooks. Albert Brooks. That's his name, folks. He's in he's Marlin from Finding Nemo. He's the dad.
Okay.
Anyway, he's in a movie where it's like there's an afterlife, and every time you die, you like get to like pick a life, or you get thrown into a new life, and it's based on the merit of your life that you lived. But when you go into your new life, you never remember anything about the afterlife or your previous life, and it's like this whole thing where you kind of just like shop for an avatar in a way.
So it's all dogs go to heaven. Basically, this movie is all dogs go to heaven.
But what I'm thinking when you say this, would the Cylon resurrection be the same if they didn't retain their memories?
No, not at all. Now Jamie is referencing Battlestar Galactica. He's referencing a race of robotic humanoids that every time they die, their memories get uploaded to a mainframe and then downloaded into a new form that has been saved at an undisclosed location for them to then go off and be merry or do whatever it is that Cylons happen to be doing.
Would a stack be useful if
far more useful
transfer your memories?
And now Jamie is referencing Altered Carbon, which is another scientific show, sci-fi show that was on Netflix. It only ran 2 seasons. Bill Bellamy was the most recent star of that show, and he didn't do so well.
Anthony Mackie.
Dang it. Was it really Anthony? It was
wow,
Anthony
man.
Mackie,
you are insulting. Although I did like
that's a shame.
So it's fine.
I was close. Anyway, so having referenced 2 sci-fi shows that maybe or may or not the audience have watched, a stack is far more in line with immortality in the way that you would view it than necessarily rebirthing oneself, because in your stack, you retain all your memories. Again, it's downloaded after your death.
Rebirthing yourself freezes your
mainframe
in its primordial state. You're never advancing. You're just the whole point of procreating is that you're mixing your genes, and there's chance mutation and all that kind of stuff. Right. You're just reproducing whenever that capability came to be, you froze your species in time. Right. Unless you got some chance mutation otherwise, but that's like, that doesn't sound
yourself
good.
not your species.
If everyone had it would be that, right? There would be
no, because you could either reproduce asexually.
You still are reproducing, but
you're
then
still reproducing.
Yourself,
I mean, that they made a big point to say that this jellyfish reproduces. So
then you would just have generations that never died, but they would you'd always have new generations.
Yes.
The old generations would always be there.
And at some point, the new generation may know more than the old generation, because they might have lived longer because of either chance or accidents. So
they might know more, but the newer generation could be physiologically advanced,
They could be that they could be, which creates
but
a
maybe
really
can still understand more complex concepts. So
well.
the
I think you're actually creating an unstable future because at some point the new generation is not only physically more advanced than the old generation that has stuck around, but they might live longer as a result of their mutations. And the old generation, because of with either a lack of adaptability, might still be dying prematurely. So, like, let's say the old generation dies around. I mean, we're just going to truncate things for the simplicity of this exercise. Let's say the old generation keeps dying around the age of 40, but their children are now living to the age of 60. So at 60, they are 20 years older than their parents who have now rebirthed back to zero
twice, and you got to like take care of your dying parents twice or something.
Well, yeah, and well, I mean, you could get to that point if you're now doubling the lifespan past your great. So you basically you could now be living to 120. Your great grandparents still dying off at 45 because their mutations just do not allow them to get past that, which creates a societal imbalance. Because at some point you're going to just the new generation is going to basically start hunger gaming the old generation into dust. Because why would you keep them around? They're inefficient. It's going to make humans very robotic in a sense.
That is an
old model.
That is a whole interesting thing. I feel like there's a lot to explore.
It's like cyberpunk. I mean, not cyberpunk. It's like what's that? What was that? The famous one with Harrison Ford, Blade Runner. It's like Blade Runner, where you've got old models hiding out, and you have these cops that are basically going to be hired to decommission them because you don't want them running around anymore. You're like, why? Why would I let this 45-year-old continue to procreate?
What does the rebirthing thing look like?
Oh man, I don't know.
Is it like a?
I'm more concerned about what it would look like in a human. What would rebirth?
Well, is it like
as a person?
Is it like a snake shedding its skin, or is it like
how gross would it be?
Can a male rebirth itself, or is it only women?
It'd be so weird.
And is it that they're actually giving birth to themselves and then they die?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, well, that must be close to what it is. With maybe that's. I mean, I don't know the true complexity.
Do all jellyfish do this?
No, just this particular species of jellyfish.
That's weird. So, I mean, I assume either this species is preyed upon, or it is like taking over
the name
regions of the ocean.
The species is Turritopsis dorni. That's the name of the species.
How jellyfish are old, right? I'm assuming this is an old species. How is this not like taking over the ocean already? Unless it's being hunted and eaten by sharks or something.
It has predators. I mean, just because you're living longer doesn't necessarally mean that
you're procreating plus you rebirth yourself. You never die. I mean, that's like insane.
Well, I mean, that's a question I actually have here that the article does not necessarily address, because I'm assuming that this is only for jellyfish that live out the entirety of their lifespan, which is back to my original paradigm, where it's like if 45 is your old age, that's when you're like this you're not rebirthing.
Oh, so instead of dying, you rebirth. It's not like
that's exactly what I have to assume here, because it's if you're getting eaten, you're not rebirthing. You know, like that's to say they're not. They're not metaphysical. They're not, they're not mythological creatures. If they're killed, I think that's the end of them. It's only if they reach the end of their lifespan.
Well, I didn't know. No, I like if the lifespan is 40, but around 20, they're like, yeah, I think I'll rebirth now.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's something that they
like as a reaction to a stressor or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know enough about this species to go into that, but you're right. I mean, I think that we're definitely getting into a lot of philosophical territory as to what that would mean for human beings if we were doing it. And unfortunately, I feel like it would be it would be very dystopian, because again, you have an old model of human that has persisted. And why would the new model keep this baby around? I mean, this thing is just not. Why would you even mate with it after a while? Because
also, who takes care of you? Like, you would need to have kids almost. Like, who would take care of you?
Well, you would. I mean, not you, but I mean, essentially, the next generation would be the parent to the old generation, because you.
Oh, you mean you can rebirth yourself and survive that, and then you just have a clone of yourself?
No. I'm saying that your children. So you think that's
that's what I mean. You would have to have a child.
Yes,
and if you didn't have a children and you rebirthed yourself, yes, who takes care of you?
Your child does.
If you have one.
If you had one, right? If you didn't, I guess the state,
The state. Wow.
orphanages. Is
And
that
it's
when you end up?
everyone, and
Is that when
everyone
you end up in a penal
rebirths.
colony? Is that
Oh
when you
my
end up on
God.
Mars? That's what Mars is. Are the people who've rebirthed. You send them off so that we don't have to
Wow.
look at them.
All the people who don't have kids that rebirth. It's like a
Well,
ticking. Wow. And then that is a chance to be, that is a vulnerability to be exploited. Like taking away or regulating a person's ability, legal right or something to have a kid.
very Gattaca.
And then being put into that vulnerable state of you'll be submitted, you'll be relinquished to the state. Wow. That's probably a dystopian part.
I'm saying in my head, Earth is the town square, and the robot, the Martian ships are the trees, and you send the trees off with the old models so that we don't have to see them. So that way you don't have to deal with what to do with them.
Sounds like a factory for body parts.
Could be that too. Anyway, I wanted to leave on what I thought. I thought this was going to be a higher note than it actually hit. It's like a
terrifying.
major, it's like a D. It's a low note. It's a major D. It's not as high as I thought it was going to be.
We're gonna live forever, folks. We're gonna live forever. You just won't remember it.
You're gonna live forever, and at some point you're gonna get decommissioned and hunted down by a Blade Runner. So
and not really understand why. You'll probably
Not
figure
at
out
all.
why, and then you'll rebirth yourself, and you'll have to learn it all.
you'll have to
over
learn
again.
all over again.
Wow.
That's the truth.
That's how the story ends. By the way,
That's a good short story. It's not bad at all, actually. Anyway, Jamie, where can they find us?
at Retraction Media, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts. Listeners, you're sending us good topics. Keep them coming, and don't forget to send your friends or family who like science and politics and anything else your favorite episode.
It's an R to the E to the T to the. Anyway, with that, Retraction out.